Now, a consultation on the plans to scrap the Disability Living Allowance has been extended by 4 days until this Friday, following a huge public response. The coalition government wants to replace the benefit, which helps to cover the extra costs arriving from a disability, with a personal independence payment in a move to streamline the system and make cuts of 20%. Disability campaigners fear the changes will leave thousands of vulnerable people isolated and financially worse off. Hayley Jarvis reports.
Go and lift your arms up for me, darling.
Anne McCutcheon takes a drive with her carer Alec to the local library. For her, trips like this provide a vital link to the outside world.
I like going to the library and I like reading books, especially Stephen Hawking's. Jane Austen, I don't seem to. Jane Austen there.
Anne has cerebral palsy and lives in a residential home in South Lanarkshire. She pays for the car with a mobility component of her Disability Living Allowance, but this could be about to change. The UK government wants to replace the Disability Living Allowance, or DLA, with a personal independence payment. This would include a new assessment to decide how much claimants would get for their personal care and mobility. All applicants would have to have their condition for 6 months before claiming benefit, and those living in residential homes would see their mobility payments scrapped. And it's this measure that worries Anne.
I'd be a prisoner in my own home if I didn't have the car, and the government wants to take it away, and I'm not very pleased about it. I think the streets like second-class citizens, and we're not. We're like everybody else. We only have a disability. That is cerebral palsy. Thank you, Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen.
Campaigners say the plans to replace DLA come at a time of great uncertainty for people with disabilities who are worried about how the soon-to-be-published welfare reform bill will affect their benefits and how council spending cuts could hit their services. But the government says it will listen to concerns raised during the consultation, which now ends at the later date of the 18th of February.
Hayley Jarvis there. Well, I'm joined now by Richard Hammer from Capability Scotland and from Aberdeen by the chair of the Work and Pension Select Committee, Anne Begg. We did ask for an interview with a minister or an MP from one of the coalition parties, but we're told no one was available. Richard Hammer, first of all, if we look at the overall picture here, do you accept cuts have to come and that all departments, lots of people throughout society are going to have to take a share in all of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think we see that cuts are occurring everywhere. The discussion about housing, obviously, there have been cuts in those budgets, but I think most people working in disability would expect that the cuts to be falling most severely on disabled people.
Now, there is some suggestion that with this particular benefit cut, councils should be picking up the slack there. Is that likely to happen, do you think?
I think what we see is that currently local authorities in Scotland rely on a proportion of disabled people using their Disability Living Allowance to prop up the Scottish care system. And I think if we see a significant cut in DLA to those people who are receiving care and who are being charged for it, I think Scottish local authorities are really going to feel the pain. So
it's actually subsidising the system at the moment, you would argue?
To an extent, yes.
And that's acceptable?
It seems to be in Scotland.
It doesn't happen in England then? There's not that
there are
in
different
one
guidelines
local authority?
in England.
Right.
There are different guidelines.
OK. Do you think too that there is perhaps not an acceptance, an easy acceptance, that actually if you cut benefits to disabled people, the effect is disproportionate because, for example, if you've less mobility, your house has to be hotter, all these sort of things. Do you think people are not looking at the big picture here when they look at the impact specifically on the disabled?
Definitely. I mean, I think DLA was always set up with a really fine purpose, which was to try and reduce the effect of being disabled on people. And some of the costs incurred are around heating or transport or washing or cleaning or specific equipment. And I think if we withdraw that sort of money, we see a massive effect, not just on people who are out of work, but also on people who are in work as well, because it's not reliant on people being in employment, it's not reliant on people being on a high or low income. It's simply there just to reduce the effect of disability on people.
And the idea then that this is somehow just trimming some of the luxuries, how would you react to that?
It most certainly isn't trimming the luxuries. Disability allowance is the lifeline that many disabled people have that helps them to lead an independent life. The government keeps going on about making sure that disabled people can lead independent lives. That's what the rhetoric says, but their actions and the proposals that they've put forward are actually taking away a lot of that independence. And your package showed the ban. That has already been announced that those in residential care are going to lose their mobility allowance if they're in the higher rate mobility. By definition, these are the most disabled people. They wouldn't be in residential care if they weren't profoundly disabled, and yet they're taking £22 a week, which is a lifeline for many of them, away from them.
How important is it that this group then has a very strong lobbying voice? Do you think that whoever shouts loudest in the months and years ahead, and whoever lobbies strongest, and whoever can have the highest political profile, will be the most successful in averting the worst of the cuts to their areas?
Well, we've seen already just in the last few weeks some of the ways that the government has backed down on the sale of forests, for instance. And I received something like 100 emails, although I'm a Scottish MP, and it wasn't really a proposal that affected Scotland. So that kind of lobbying of MPs has certainly worked. But on the same side, now I'm getting quite a lot of emails with regard to this, but that's because I'm chair of the relevant select committee rather than the individual MPs, and it has to be coalition MPs who get large numbers of letters complaining and setting out exactly the effects on individuals. Because this group of people very often are the dispossessed, the voiceless, they're not always in a position to shout the loudest, and that's what's very distressing for those who are carers.
But I think, does there have to be at some point now, and do politicians have to have the courage at some point now to actually say, we're going to stop this programme of salami slicing various services, and we are going to have a public debate on what we can actually afford as a society and what has to be provided out of the public purse? Why are politicians of all parties so reluctant to have that conversation, do you think?
Sorry, was that to me?
Yes, Anne.
Sorry. I think that should be the conversation. That's what I'm certainly encouraging my own political party. You know, we lost the election, we've got a new leader, and we need to be sitting down and looking actually the principles of the welfare system. We're 60 years on from the Beveridge report. We need to be looking at what is reasonable in the modern age. Now, since then, expectations have gone up amongst disabled people and what they expect to do. We expect to work. We expect to be able to have a full social life. We expect to participate in society like everyone else. Now, that wasn't the case back in the 1940s. Very often, people like myself were shut away in hospitals and never to see the light of day again until the 1970s, 1980s, when we started to move people back into the community. And that costs money. That can't be done on the cheap. And we have to make sure that we get it right.
Richard Hammer, it looks like £2 billion worth of benefits to disabled people will be hit in Scotland. Is it also the case that specifically housing benefit may hit disabled people disproportionately hard, changes to the housing benefit system?
Definitely. I mean, we see disabled people are very badly hit by the cuts being put forward. Historically, the housing supply for disabled people has been very, very poor. We see that both the reduction in housing association grants, the direct capital subsidy for housing associations, and also then the housing benefit cuts are squeezing the availability of housing for disabled people even more. So it's not a good picture there either.
But you're going to start shouting really loudly, presumably. I understand there's going to be a big demonstration at the Lib Dem conference in Perth next month, for example, when Nick Clegg is up, possibly also targeting the Tory conference. How do you take this campaign forward, do you think?
I mean, it is a massive problem, as Anne said, that disabled people are not as mobile, hence they get benefits like these. But with 1 in 5 people being talked about being simply just cut off the side of the Disability Living Allowance benefit income, then disabled people have to stand up now. A prominent disability activist was saying the other day, disabled people aren't concerned about these benefit cuts. They're terrified. And I think that is the case. And it is now the time for disabled people to stand up and say enough is enough.
Thank you both very much indeed. We have to leave it there. Thank you very much.